its codification between 1858 and 1859, Australian football has had rapid growth in popularity, both as a spectator sport and as a pastime. Women have been involved in the sport since its inception, and the history women have in the sport is far richer than people realise. The formation of the AFLW in 2017 was a crucial point in the history of Australian football, with the game's female athletes quickly becoming household names. It is extremely important, however, to highlight the endeavours made by football-passionate women throughout history that have shaped, nurtured, and even helped the game survive and become the sport we see today. The book, titled Australia's Game, The History of Australian Football, describes how even in some of the very first observed games of Australian football, the presence of women in the onlooking crowd is apparent as they support their male friends or family that were playing. In this cartoon, published in an article of the Melbourne Punch in July 1896, we can see the umpire being set upon by onlookers. Women in the stands can be seen as some of the more enthusiastic participants, both verbally and physically becoming involved in the altercation, which is said to have been commonplace in matches at the time. During the First World War, women were able to make their first proper impact into Australian football history, with close to 40% of Australia's male population aged between 18 and 44 enlisted in the war between 1914 and 1918. This meant that very few men were still available to play football. As a result, some clubs were forced to merge and some ceased operations entirely. The lack of male players allowed women to finally step in and play. The first documented women's match was held in Perth in 1915 and was organised as a wartime fundraiser. The teams that played consisted of women that worked for the Foy and Gibson department stores. Women's matches then became more popular and spread across the nation. In 1918, a women's match was held in Ballarat between the Lucas girls from Ballarat's E. Lucas Company and the Khaki girls from Melbourne's Federal Khaki Clothing Company. The match was played in front of between 6,000 and 7,000 spectators, which was the largest crowd to have gathered for a football match in Ballarat so far. The match raised £330 or $29,000 in today's currency, which funded the construction of Ballarat's Arch of Victory, a monument to commemorate those who served in the war. It was not until 1981 that the Victorian Women's Football League was formed, which allowed for women to participate more regularly in the sport. Junior football, however, allowed girls to play mixed-gender football until they turned 12 with no option to continue. In a momentous occasion, this was eventually overturned when three teenage girls, Helen Taylor, Emily Stania and Penny Cooler-Reid, challenged this rule through VCAT in 2003 and won, which eventually led to Football Victoria creating a junior female competition with only 6 teams in 2004. The formation of the WAFL in 2017 marked another step forward for women's football in Australia. However, as has been explained, the history of women's football is clearly far richer than people realise.